I'm not a CNN journalist. I'm not a BBC journalist. You know what I am? I'm somebody who's stayed in this land for 32 years. I'm somebody who's in this land, and I'm talking to taxi drivers, I'm talking to waitresses, I'm talking to security guards, I'm talking to school teachers, I'm talking to Arabs, to Jews, to Muslims, to Christians, to Baha'i, to Druze. That's who I am, speaking from the first-hand, on-the-ground perspective of real life and real people. Hey friends, Bishop Robert Stearns coming to you live this week from Israel with the Israel Frontlines Update. Thank you so much for tuning in. As you know, I have been back and forth from Israel pretty much constantly since 1991. We've brought over 35,000 people with us here to Israel. And in fact, today or tomorrow, as you're viewing this, if you're viewing it on its first release, we've got 96 people coming, including 33 senior pastors on yet another Eagle's Wings Solidarity mission, one of our Watchmen on the Wall missions to Israel. If you've not yet become a Watchman on the Wall, go to the website, get the curriculum, get involved, get educated on the Jewish roots of the Christian faith and the urgency of standing with Israel today. There is so much to talk about this week. I honestly don't even know where to begin. Let's begin with Lebanon, because certainly this is absolutely in the news cycle hour by hour right now. As you know, Israel is fighting a war with Hamas in the south, in Gaza, but this week began enduring hundreds and hundreds of rockets being fired from the north, from Lebanon. Now folks, what's happened in Lebanon is a tragedy. Lebanon used to be such an example of peaceful coexistence in the Middle East. There was a beautiful harmony and a beautiful coexistence between the Christian community and the Muslim community in Lebanon. In fact, there was a status quo between Maronite Christians, Catholic Christians, and Muslims, that they would share the responsibilities of president, prime minister. These would rotate within the faith communities. But radical Islam, backed by Sharia-based Iran, got a foothold in once beautiful Lebanon. Beirut, the beautiful city of Beirut, used to be known as the Paris of the Middle East. I have so many Lebanese Christian friends in America. There's a large Lebanese Christian population in the city of Buffalo. In fact, we have a caterer that we use every week. They're a Lebanese Christian family, amazing food, but so many of them have had to escape out of Lebanon. Why? Every country except Israel is showing a plummeting of the Christian population. Only in Israel, the Jewish state, is Christianity growing numerically. Why? Because Israel is a country that guarantees freedom of religion. Folks, this is not rocket science. We have to look at the geniuses at Columbia and Harvard who keep blithering on and on inanely that Israel is an apartheid society. Well, what about the greater Middle East, where Christianity is plummeting? Forget finding any Jews. What happened to the Jews of Iraq? What happened to the Jews of Iran? What happened to the Jews of Egypt? What happened to the Jews of Yemen? There used to be large Jewish populations in all of these nations. They had to flee. They had to escape. And after the Jews had to escape, now the Christians are having to escape. The only place that Christians are dwelling in safety and growing is within the pluralistic, democratic Jewish state of Israel. That's the truth of it, folks. You can yell and scream all you want, but the reality is Israel guarantees freedom of religion, guarantees freedom of the press, rights for women, rights for social minorities, It is a bastion of democracy and human rights in the Middle East. Lebanon used to be a close second. Lebanon was a peaceful nation. There was a great sense of coexistence between the Christian and Muslim community, and now Iran came in and got a foothold in Lebanon through Hezbollah. And Hezbollah has become a stranglehold, has gotten a stranglehold grip in Lebanon, and now rockets are firing over into Israel. And so Israel is choosing this week what is their course of action going to be. Some have called it the plagues of Egypt. You saw the exploding beepers that happened, utterly brilliant campaign. The beepers of the Hezbollah terrorists exploded, and then the walkie-talkies exploded, and now this week Israel has done targeted assassinations of very high-level Hezbollah operatives and has been able to take out several of them this week. But are they going to continue this attack in Lebanon, or is there going to be a ceasefire? And this is a question that's hanging over Israel right now. As I'm here in the hotel, as I'm in restaurants, everyone is talking about it. We have to understand Hezbollah is a much stronger foe than Hamas is. Now you look at the challenges that Israel has had fighting Hamas for a year, and they're still not complete. I mean, they're close now, but they still have not finished that job. Hezbollah is a much larger, more well-established, well-financed, and well-armed militia group of Iran. So there's this question. Now, Bibi Netanyahu has no question in his mind. He stated this week that the report of a ceasefire is incorrect, that the Prime Minister has directed the IDF to continue fighting with full force according to the plan that was presented, and that the fighting in Gaza will also continue. And so, folks, imagine the stress on this tiny nation. Imagine New Jersey having to be at war with New York and Pennsylvania simultaneously. I mean, this is the reality that Israel is facing right now. Are things going to escalate, or is there going to be a ceasefire? Now, Bibi Netanyahu and also members of the IDF went online in Lebanon and warned citizens prior to attacks. They announced where they would be attacking. They announced the areas they would be hitting, where Hezbollah has put themselves into the midst of civilian targets, and they warned the Lebanese citizens to escape. And so Israel is doing its best to eliminate these Hezbollah targets in a very specific way. But Hezbollah has an arsenal, listen, of over 150,000 rockets, including long range and drones. Yesterday, there were 2 armed drones that were flown into Israeli airspace. Israel shot one of the drones down, and another one did fire its weapon. 2 people were lightly injured, but then the drone crashed. So we thank God that there was not greater devastation there. But this is what is happening on the ground. Now, at the same time, the United Nations is gathering this week. The General Assembly of the UN is gathering. Prime Minister Netanyahu is heading to the UN, and he's there with the reality that over 100 hostages continue to be held in captivity in Gaza now for a full year. Can you imagine? 100 hostages. Listen, Israel is a small country. Israel is a country of only about 10 million people. So when you have 100 hostages, I can't do the math quickly in my head, but if you would imagine, in America, we've got 300 million people. So whatever that math is, it would be something like having 5,000, 10,000 hostages. You could imagine how the American psyche would be affected if that many people were held hostage, because that's how many families are impacted. That's how many people have friends who are hostages. We're here in the hotel, and these hotels, people forget, the hotels are packed with refugee families, because no one can live right now in Sderot. No one can live in any of the cities of the south, and no one can live in the cities of the north. These are war zones. So there are right now upwards of 150,000 displaced Israeli families. They're scattered in hotels, they're in shelters, they're all across. Children haven't been able to go to school for a year. People have not been able to return to their homes because Israel is living under constant bombardment. Folks, I cannot explain to you how upside down the world is. Because if you're sitting in the West, the picture you get is that strong Israel is just destroying, committing genocide in Gaza, etc., etc. Folks, I'm telling you, you're here, hundreds of thousands of people are displaced, rockets are being fired every single day, rockets are being fired. Thank God Israel has an advanced Iron Dome system that is stopping the vast majority of the rockets from hitting, but that doesn't mean the sirens don't go off. That doesn't mean you don't have to get to a bomb shelter, and that doesn't mean that at times the bombs get through. It's like the world wants Israel to feel guilty for being able to defend itself. It's like Israel should feel bad that they're winning a war that they didn't start. Israel should feel guilt for winning a war that they didn't begin. This is the reality of what is happening on the ground here in Israel. And what we get through the media is so absolutely upside down. I'm telling you, the people here, day after day after day, all I hear is this: when can we have peace? When can we have peace? What do you hear from Iran? What do you hear from Hezbollah? What do you hear from Hamas? When will Israel cease to exist? Who is calling for genocide? Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, radical Islam? They are calling for genocide. What is Israel calling for? Peaceful coexistence. This is the reality of what's happening on the ground in the land this week. There's so much going on, I don't even know where to begin. I'm going to go to the States for just a moment, where the boycott, divestment, and sanctions. Now, some of you are not familiar with this term, BDS. The BDS movement, boycott, divestment, and sanctions. This is a movement within colleges and universities, and sometimes within pension funds, to boycott Israel, to divest from Israel, and to call for sanctions against Israel. Well, a new report shows that America's largest 100 universities could lose $33 billion over the next 10 years if they divest from Israel. They're going to be losing those endowments if they continue this campaign of boycott, divestment, and sanctions against Israel. BDS rejects understanding between Israelis and Palestinians. BDS rejects peace-building efforts at the grassroots level. And we see the marches from the river to the sea. Well, folks, what is that? That is a calling for the ending of Israel. We see the line, globalize the intifada. Intifada now. Listen to me. I lived here during the second intifada. I was here in Israel during the Second Intifada. I literally saw testimonies in front of Congress last week. And this woman from one of the Arab American organizations, she was standing up and she was saying, well, Intifada might mean one thing to one person, but it might mean something. No. I'll tell you what the Intifada was. The Intifada was buses blowing up. The Intifada was Sbarro's pizza restaurant blowing up. The Intifada, I was here during the Intifada. If you got on a bus, you were taking your life in your hand. If you went into a restaurant, you were taking your life into your hands. There's no question of what the word Intifada means. You're playing word games. You're lying. Intifada has a meaning. And folks, this is the problem when you can't define what a woman is. When you begin to partner with radical Marxism that deconstructs language. So now we're not sure what the meaning of a word is. Well, there was the first Intifada in Israel and there was the second Intifada in Israel. And guess what the similarity between the two of them was? They were both bloody and there were dead people, dead Jews. So the similarity between the first Intifada and the second Intifada was that there was dead Jews. There was violence. So don't sit back there and try to testify to Congress and try to speak in your halls of hallowed higher education. No, we're calling for an intellectual Intifada. We're calling for this. No, words have meaning because they have history and they result in action. And when you spew forth hate speech, like from the river to the sea and calling for Intifada, you are the ones responsible, calling for violence and death and bloodshed. The people of Israel, the vast majority, of course, every society is going to have some radical fringes. There's no society on earth that doesn't have radical fringes. The vast majority of Israelis want to live in peace with their Arab neighbors. It is the far left that is giving intellectual cover to radical Islam to call for Intifada, which is to call for dead Jews. So when we get into things like BDS, when we get into these intellectual attacks that are happening, folks, it has real consequences in real life. Do me a favor right now, hit the subscribe button. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the share button. Get the word out. I'm not a CNN journalist. I'm not a BBC journalist. You know what I am? I'm somebody who's stayed in this land for 32 years. I'm somebody who's in this land and I'm talking to taxi drivers, I'm talking to waitresses, I'm talking to security guards, I'm talking to school teachers, I'm talking to Arabs, to Jews, to Muslims, to Christians, to Baha'i, to Druze. That's who I am. Speaking from the first-hand, on-the-ground perspective of real life and real people. And I want to tell you something. The Muslim Arabs living in Israel, there are close to 2 million Muslims living in Israel. Do you know what they're not doing? Harvard? Do you know what they're not doing? Columbia? They're not setting up tent cities. They're not calling for the Intifada. Do you know what they're doing? They're going to work. The Muslim Arabs living in Israel, the Israeli Arab citizens of this land, do you know what they're doing? They're going to work. They're raising their families. They're participating in society. There's over 2 million of them. If they wanted to, they could shut this country down tomorrow. That's 1 out of every 5 inhabitants. Do you know why they're not doing it? Because they know that they have it better here than they would have in Jordan, in Lebanon, in Egypt, in Iran, in Iraq, in any of these other nations. They have more prosperity, more freedom, more self-respect, more ethnic identity and pride here in the land of Israel. You got me fired up. Folks, this is the reality on the ground. I know the noise is loud, and that's why we've got to be louder. We have to pull back the veil of rhetoric, and we have to get to the truth on the ground, and that's what the Israel Frontline Update is all about. That's why you tune in every week to the Israel Frontline Update, so that we can bring you the facts on the ground and you can be empowered to speak to your coworkers, to speak to your school board, to speak to the people at work, to speak to your children and your grandchildren. Do that right now by hitting the like button, the share button, the subscribe button. That helps our algorithm. It really, really does. I know that it's easy to just, gloss by that, but it helps us. If you'll like, subscribe, and share, do that, and I'll see you right here next week on the Israel Frontlines Update.